Disinformation and fake news is something that's permeated throughout society in many ways, and the same can be said for the digital transformation and technology space. But what is the fake news you should be aware of in digital transformation? That's what I'm going to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, disinformation and fake news is a big problem in society today. Whether you're following politics or current events or whatever the case may be, there's a perception that repetition can make things true. And a lot of times what happens is through repetition, we start to believe things that aren't true. And that's something that's very true in the digital transformation space. So what I want to do today is talk about what some of those aspects of fake news are and some of those myths and misconceptions within the technology and digital transformation space are, so that you can be aware and ultimately make better decisions that support you and benefit your organization throughout your digital transformation. Now, for more information on this topic and other digital strategy considerations, I encourage you to download our digital transformation report, which is an annual report we publish each year that highlights some best practices. It provides independent software reviews and rankings, and provides other lessons learned from having helped so many different digital transformation teams through their projects over the years. You can read that report by scanning the QR code in front of you, or you can go to the links in the description field below. The first bit of fake news to be aware of in the digital transformation space is this concept of a silver bullet. A lot of times software vendors and technical implementers will sell you on an idea that sounds too good to be true. Things like best practices and other aspects of digital transformations can be perceived and sold to you as something that's going to be a silver bullet that will solve all of the world's problems as it relates to digital transformation. And it's important to recognize that no matter what decisions you make or what technology you buy or how you deploy the technologies, you're always going to have strengths and weaknesses, and there's always going to be trade-offs. You're going to be trading one risk for others as you make these different decisions. So if you ever come across an answer that seems like it's a silver bullet that minimizes all of your risk or even most of your risk, just be aware and know that that's probably not true, and there's probably a blind spot there that you'll want to dig into. Just a couple examples of silver bullets in the digital transformation space would be things like Agile implementations. I'm going to come back to that point. Implementation methodologies and accelerators, as well as industry best practices. Those are three examples of silver bullets that are commonly seen in the transformation space, as is the overall sale of technology. Oftentimes, technical solutions are sold as a silver bullet that can solve all of your business problems, but as is the case in these examples and others, that's simply not true. Software vendors and technical implementers are notorious for selling a one-size-fits-all or a generic solution to organizations. This comes in the form of the technology they sell, as well as how the technology gets implemented. So a lot of times what happens is organizations have their standard commercial off-the-shelf software, and they will try to sell that software into any given situation, regardless of whether or not it's the right fit for that organization. Same with implementation strategies and plans and proposals. Technical implementers and software vendors will commonly sell a boilerplate implementation solution that's based on unrealistic expectations and not aligned with the assumptions and realities of your organization, but they'll sell it as a one-size-fits-all answer. So it's important to recognize that your organization is different, it's unique, there's different nuances to your organization and your operations, and there is no one-size-fits-all that's going to align with your needs 100%. The key is to find the solution or the solutions that best fit your needs, and then from there identify what the risks are so you can mitigate those risks. But regardless of what your solution is, it's important to recognize one size does not fit all, and chances are fairly high, if not 100%, that you're going to have to tailor any given solution for your specific needs and priorities. One of the biggest pieces of fake news that comes from implementation technology consultants is that they can do it all. They can be your one-stop shop for your digital transformation, for your software implementation, or whatever the project may entail. This, too, is simply not true. What software implementation consultants are good at is deploying technology. That, however, does not constitute an entire digital transformation. An entire digital transformation or ERP implementation needs to focus on more than just the technology. It needs to focus on things that are much more important than technology. So things like business process reengineering and improvement, organizational change management, the overall solution architecture, integration, data migration, as well as program management. Those are just a few examples of some of the work streams and competencies that need to be part of a digital transformation project team, and no one software vendor is going to be able to provide all of those competencies. Now, to be clear, they will tell you they can. They will say that yes, we have a change management team, or yes, we can provide program management. But their view and their definition of what those different work streams are typically very myopic and very myopically focused on the technology itself. So it's important to recognize that no one party can do it all. And the reason that they perpetuate this fake news despite that fact is because it benefits them. What these third parties want is for you to put all your eggs in one basket and all your revenue that they're generating from you in one basket. So it's important to diversify and hedge and make sure that you have the right skill sets and competencies on your project team to ensure that your project is successful. Another piece of fake news that perpetuates the technology industry is this idea that you don't need to worry about the current state. All you really need to worry about is the future state. And by the way you address the future state is to deploy our technology. Or so a third party might tell you during their sales cycle. However, it is absolutely critical that you focus on the current state. You don't want to dwell on the current state. You don't need to overanalyze the current state, but you do need to understand where you're starting from and where you're headed. The reason this is so important is because, first of all, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and eliminate some of the core strengths and competencies that you've built over the years in the name of deferring to new technologies. You need to understand what those competencies are so that your future state can build on those competencies. A second reason why understanding your current state is so important is because you need to understand the magnitude of change that your organization is going through. In other words, is this an incremental change, or is it more of a quantum leap, massive improvement or massive change to your organization, or is it somewhere in between? The only way to fully understand that is to understand where you're starting from in addition to where you're going. So regardless of the fake news you might get in the industry that suggests that you don't need to worry about the current state and only worry about the future state, you want to make sure that you avoid that pitfall because it's something that leads to a lot of chaos and lack of direction for organizations that fall into that trap. Most industry pundits, consultants, and software vendors will tell you that technology matters more than anything. Their technology can solve problems, their technology can provide new capabilities, their technology is easier and better and faster and cheaper than past versions of technology. All those messages create this perception that technology should really be the core focus of a digital transformation. However, I would argue, based on experience and based on what we see with our clients, that technology matters the least in a digital transformation. Despite the name digital transformation, it's the people, the process, and the strategy that's ultimately going to determine whether or not your project is successful, and rarely is the technology itself going to determine whether you're successful or not. Now, don't get me wrong, it is possible that you deploy the wrong technology that's not a good fit for your organization. It's possible that you could break a technology by trying to customize it or failing to configure it properly. There are breakdowns that can happen from a technology perspective. In addition, technology can in fact bring new competencies and streamline processes to your organization, but that's just a beginning point. That's just a starting point that isn't real until you address the more important parts of digital transformation, which are the people, process, and strategy aspects of change. So when someone suggests to you that the technology matters most, it's important to recognize that this is not true. This is disinformation, and it's actually the other components, the non-technical components of transformation, that are most important to success versus failure. Now, the final piece of fake news to be aware of is that Agile and/or other implementation methodologies could make your project successful. And the industry is going through a weird dynamic right now where they're constantly trying to find ways to show that they've learned from mistakes in the past. And digital transformations have a history of failure, so one way to address that is to say we're going to deploy technology differently, which we do need to be more successful. However, Agile and implementation methodologies alone are not going to make a project successful. Now, the caveat to this, or the exception to this, would be if an implementation methodology focuses heavily on change management or heavily on process improvement, then yes, that could make your project more successful. But if the implementation methodology focuses on deploying technology faster, technology itself, without necessarily focusing on process and people improvements, then that methodology is going to fail just as methodologies in the past have. So similar to what I was discussing earlier about silver bullets, you want to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of believing that just because it's an Agile implementation or because you're using some sort of implementation accelerator, that's going to make your project successful, because faster is not always better. Sometimes you need to take the time to focus on process improvement and organizational changes to ensure that the project is successful. So I hope this has provided some guidance and direction on how to see through some of these pieces of fake news that permeate the digital transformation and technology space. For more best practices and lessons learned from digital transformations throughout the world, I encourage you to read our Digital Transformation Report, which highlights a number of best practices, lessons learned, provides independent software reviews and rankings, and other information that are meant to help you be more successful in your digital transformation. You can read that report by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or you can go to the links in the description field below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm this.
2 steps, then start talking.
Oh, I'm so excited that I encourage you to download our guide. No. Guide to what? So that in your transformation, you can build on those strengths